Hello, everybody. I received an email from the Make WordPress Core newsletter today that contains something or just an announcement of a feature that I thought was so exciting that I felt compelled to immediately jump on and create a video to show you what it is and how to use it. And that super exciting thing is the block bindings API. And as a theme developer, this is something that I feel that the block editor has been missing from day one. And this is the ability to push dynamic data into a block, ideally through something like a post meta data field. Before, in order to do that, if you weren't using advanced custom fields to make your blocks, because that would store it in a slightly different manner. But if you had metadata and you wanted to use that, control metadata through a field, and then present it in the block editor, you were creating these small little blocks that would very intentionally reach out, grab the metadata, and dynamically put it into the block. And what this created was a lot of cruft for blocks. So you were creating multiple blocks to grab little pieces of metadata. And you could be cute, you could be clever and group them together in a way, maybe have a way to select specific fields that you wanted to. But the reality is that there's already a heading block. There's already a paragraph block. And really you don't need 2, 3, 5 other paragraph blocks that are all purpose-built to grab specific data. You really just need one paragraph block that can have its data pushed into it so that it can display. And that's what the block bindings API is. It is a way for you to set a source on a specific block and then grab that source from post meta or create custom sources for yourself and then push that data in so that your paragraph, if you need to put something in just a general text area, you can do that, but you can pull it from metadata. So you get that nice isolation of the post data as like a single object that can be migrated and moved around. And then you get your nice composable environment where you slap blocks down onto a canvas and you get to build the page out the way that you want to. What's also great about this is currently it is saved within the block comments in the block editor, the baked out HTML that saves the attributes of a block, which means you can save it as a pattern. You can take the time to build these like template level blocks and you can put them off in a pattern. You can put them off into an all block template and reuse them. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. I am looking forward to not having to manage a bunch of like theme data individually through the block editor. So let's get started. All right, let's get to the part where I show you how to use it, because after all, that's probably what you're here for. Okay, so here in this post, I have an image block and a paragraph block. Something worth noting up front here is that the block binding API is only available to 4 WordPress core blocks right now, and that is image, paragraph, heading, and button. And then within those, there are only a select few attributes that you can target as well, with the idea that soon this is something that you'll be able to extend out to any block, and you'll be able to open up bindings for the blocks that you create, and that more of the core WordPress blocks, if not all of them, will then also get those binding points as well. For now, it's pretty limited. This is kind of our first run at this, but it's a pretty good tease. Plenty that we can do with what we have. So let me show you how to hook this up to supply an image from an outside source from the block, and also supply text from an outside source. We're going to start with this paragraph. Something to note right now, or another thing to note right now, is that you cannot access this directly through any setting within the editor itself. This is something that you need to put into the block data using the editor, or if you were to do it through a theme, a template part in a theme. If you look here, I have added an object within the comment, within the opening comment for this paragraph block. Blocks have an opening comment and then an ending comment. And within this object, it's an object with nested objects in it. We have metadata as an object, and within that, it holds another object called bindings. And then within bindings is where we are going to define each individual argument, its source, and the key or the data, that values that we're going to pass to the source to get the information back. So since we're only dealing with post meta right now, we're not dealing with a custom source, we're going to supply a single key per attribute. The one attribute that is open to us in the paragraph is the content attribute. It's kind of the only one that matters, largely. So under bindings, we have our content object, and then within the content object, we supply a source, which is core post meta. This is one of the two sources that you have access to right now. You either use post meta or you use a custom source that you would supply that would have its own name. And then within that object, we also supply an arguments object with one more property inside of it, which is the key. And the key is the name of the meta field that we are looking to target. And in this case, it is called theme binding text. So scrolling down here to the bottom of this, we're just to view the custom fields that are available within this post. I have two in here. I have binding text and binding image. And here in the text, it's a flat text area with just some lorem ipsum in it. So we're going to switch back over out of the code editor, and we're going to look back here at the block editor. See there, all of our lorem ipsum here. And we're going to type in something other than lorem ipsum. And we're going to update the page. Sorry. We're going to update the custom field, and then we're going to update the page. And then we see here that something other than lorem ipsum has been pushed into the block. So we now no longer control the block text through the block editor. We control it through this custom field. And for a plugin, this is something that this is custom field data that you could get from a plugin. This is custom field data that you could derive from advanced custom fields if it's something that you set up in your theme. This one's pretty easy because it's a flat text field. No pressure on that one. It's not an array, it's not a complicated object, but we'll get to that later. Pretty easy, right? All right. So let's go one step further and let's do it again, and let's do it for image. So we're going to go back to the code editor. I'm going to make my life a little easy here by selecting this big object we have. We're only going to change a couple things about it. Make some room inside of this opening comment for image. And most of this is going to stay the same. Metadata is still the overall object that we have our binding objects in. But the thing that we want to change is that we're no longer targeting the content attribute, because that's not applicable to image, and even if it was, it's not what we're looking to change. We want to change the URL of the image. It is one of the few attributes that you have access to. We are still going to keep our source for URL coming from core post meta, but we're going to pull from a different place. And we are going to pull from theme binding image. And then we're going to exit the editor. And you can see here that we have this unsplash image of a basket full of kittens that is now getting pulled in instead of what we would upload through the media library. One other thing that we can target in here, we can also target the alt text. So let's go back into the code editor. Here under bindings, we want to create. I keep hitting tab in here like it is my text editor, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work like that in WordPress. And we want to target alt. And this is just going to be a little messy here for a moment. I'm going to stop fighting it. We want to define our source, and our source is core post meta. Oops, got my fingers in the wrong place. Post meta, and our args are the only one that we can define for post meta, which is key. And we want to do theme binding alt. And then I don't believe I've set up theme binding alt down here. Theme binding, oops, alt. And then we just want to say kittens. I have my microphone blocking my view of the. Not only do I have my microphone blocking my view, I have my face blocking the add custom field. So a reveal there, because I believe it also moved it on screen. We'll just put me back where I belong. And we'll do that. And we will check here. So one thing that you'll notice is that we have, now that we've bound this up, theme binding alt is now showing an alternative text to show that that is what we've bound that attribute to. We're going to save this, view the post, and let's see if I got it right. How about that? Let me move my face again. All right, and you'll see that here we have alt kittens, which is something that we did not set through the image itself. This is something that we set through a custom field within the post itself. So quick recap for this. Right now, there is not a way for you to pick a block and then through the menu here on the side, set a binding. Bindings have to be set through the actual block code, the block markup that is generated. It is saved within the top part of the block comment, and then it is saved in a structure, in an object structure of metadata holding your bindings, and then within bindings, you will then supply an object for each attribute that you're targeting within the block, and within each one of those, you'll supply a source, and then you'll supply your arguments. The good thing about this is you could then take this block of kittens right here, and you could save this as a block pattern. You could save this into a template file, and then just make these custom fields available. You would not have to do this every single time. Even in its nascent state, where you have limited options, you are able to take these bindings and store them somewhere else so that they are reusable, and then it'll only get better from there. All right. The next and final part of this is to talk about how to create custom sources, which is probably the thing that is going to be used most of the time, especially when you want to integrate with something like ACF, or you want to pull your data from an external source. Last part before we move on is this information is all written out on the WordPress Developer Blog. What is his name? Justin Tadlock is the author who did 2 full tutorial posts that show what the block binding API is, how it works, how to hook it up, and then also how to do custom routes. I will link that in both of those in the description so that if you don't want to hear me talk about it, you can go and read the rest of it. All right, the last thing that we're going to cover in this is how to create a custom source. Real quick, one thing that I alluded to in the previous section is that you only had 2 sources to connect to, one of them being the post meta one, and then the other one being a custom source. I don't believe that's quite right. There is an additional source, and that is for pattern overriding, and that is to solve a particular problem where when you have a synced block pattern that you would want to use the binding API, you wouldn't want your bindings to populate across the entirety of all of your instances of a synced block. So instead you can have, I believe the source is there for you to pull from synced bits of a pattern. Seems kind of specific for now, outside of the use cases that we want to cover just here in the introduction. The big thing that we want to cover is how do we create custom sources that will, in a lot of cases for images and text, make all the difference as to, maybe you don't want to store everything in a flat field, or you want to make some decisions. And we're kind of back to some good old theming stuff. Here we are going to use PHP. We're going to dip into the functions.php file and set up a custom source. I am also going to use ACF in this example so that I can kind of show you that advanced custom fields is very much still part of this equation. It's just we tap into it a little differently. So here under block bindings, we're gonna set a new source for image. Is what we're gonna do. I have a advanced custom fields image field set up here, set to bound image. Something I want to mention really quick is we're gonna dip into ACF, and here under this bound image field that I set up, very important. You have to do this. You need to go into group settings for that field and you need to show it in REST. If you do not do that, you will not be able to get to it through the bindings API. Show in REST, very important. Even if you were initializing your custom fields through a different means, this is something that you would need to set in order for it to work. So we'll go back to posts, back to the binding API example real quick. I'm going to switch over here to VS Code and we're going to take a look at this functions.php file. So here we have an init action that's going to call theme register block bindings, which is just a custom function name. And within that, we are going to call register block bindings source. And this is where we're going to set up the name of our custom source, and we're going to give it a callback to go and fetch the data that we need. So here we have called the source theme/bound image, and then the callback that we're going to call is theme bound image callback, which is here below. So this is the setup for it. There are some additional things that you can do with this, but at base level, this is how you would get a custom source where you're going to go and grab data from somewhere else. Here in our callback, we're going to pass in something. We're going to pass in source arguments, which is one of the three things that this function will take in. One of the things that you can send in, you get the source args by default. The second thing that you could pass in is the block object itself if you needed to examine the block that was making the binding call, make some decisions there. And then the third one would be the value of the binding that you're looking to pass in. If you need a default, if you want the existing setting on the block and then you want to use that to further make decisions. But we're just going to use source args for right now. First thing, we're just going to check if a key was not set on the source argument, we're just going to skip over. We're just not going to let this happen. But after that, we are going to globalize the post object so that we can grab it, because we're going to need it in order to get the ACF field that we're looking for to call get image. So we call get image, we call bound image, and we use the post ID, and we need that just because here in this action, advanced custom fields is not the get field function in ACF doesn't know what we're looking at unless we tell it which ID we are currently looking for. And then we're going to do, because the image object in advanced custom fields passes back an array of information, we want we want to be able to request specific things. So we're going to use this source, this bound image source, to pull two different types of information. And we want the URL and we want the alt, which is what ACF is going to pass back to us in an object, but we need to know how to access it. And that's what we set up in the functions.php file, or you could set it up in a plugin file as long as you register it through the theme register blocks bindings. So let's get back over here into Arc. And something I've found is that ACF is not going to, if you use the get field function, ACF is not going to directly update your information. You're not going to be able to see it here in the block editor. In fact, if you select this, you're going to get this message that says this is connected to a custom field. Same thing for the alt text here. You're not going to see the update. We're going to update this and we're going to view the post. And you will see here that we do have the image that we selected in the block editor. So let's go back just to show that it's working. We're going to pick a different image, select, update, view post, and you'll see that this new one is here, chosen through the ACF field. All right, how did we hook it up? Let's go back into the code editor, and I want to show you the changes that I made here. Here under the metadata bindings, we are still looking to bind URL and alt attributes of the block, but we've changed our source, and we've changed it to theme bound image, which is the name that we set for the source when we called that register source bindings. And here in the args, we still use key. We have decided to still use key, but instead of passing in the name of the field, we are passing in a value of URL or alt. And this is what will help our switch statement in functions.php decide which part of the custom field that we're calling it's going to pass back to us. So instead of calling a flat metadata field that's just going to return some text, we get to tell this, hey, we want the URL back from this, or we'd like the alt text back from this. And we get two different types of data for one block out of the same source. Very handy. And what that leaves us with is, well, again, does an update. I'm sure this is something that will improve in the future, but now you get to have your advanced custom fields post, and then through functions.php, you can make some decisions here. You're not bound to just going out, pulling the flat data from the field and displaying it. That's fine for something like text. If you needed an alt text field, or you needed just a single line field to put in some information. But if you have something more complicated through advanced custom fields, or even through another source, where you need to do a little bit, you need to make some decision making, you have some conditional statements in the way, or you'd like to have the ability to switch tracks for a given source, this is how you would do it. All right, so recap here on just the second part is, if you are going to use ACF, or whenever you set up any custom fields, show in REST needs to be set to true in order for you to be able to access it through the block binding API. To set up a custom source, you need to register that source either in your functions.php file in your theme or through your plugin. And then within that, you need to supply a name for your source, and you need to supply a callback for your source. And then within the callback, you can receive the arguments, you could potentially receive the entire block object, you could receive the value of the block that is making the binding call. You make some decisions, and then you return the data that you want to push into that particular binding. All of it works the same once that source is set up. The difference being is that you don't have to use key. Key is specific to post meta. these are arguments that you could choose to push in. We could have any number of properties that we would set on this that we would then push over into the source that we could use to make decisions. And let me think. That's it. Overall, still pretty exciting. I'm pretty pleased with this. Even in this nascent state, there are plenty of things that I could use to make a block theme far more viable. Lets me hook back into the data in a way that the block editor hasn't been able to do. The idea that this is the first pass, and that things like list and cover and all of these other blocks are going to open it up with the ability eventually for me to add it to the blocks that we create for our clients. It's beautiful. It feels much more mature. All right, well, thanks for listening, and see you in the next one.